What is the average retirement income? Most people don't actually know the answer. They just feel like it's probably not great. We all hear the same story. People are behind. Retirement is getting harder. More seniors are working longer than they planned just to keep the lights on. Some rely on family. Others lean heavily on government programs. And for many, the idea of a comfortable, carefree retirement feels distant. So today, let's put feelings aside and look at the numbers, because the reality is both more surprising and more revealing than most people expect. But first, quick pause. If understanding money before it becomes a problem matters to you, subscribe. It helps more people hear this while there's still time to act. All right, let's talk about what retirement actually looks like when you strip away the fear and the fantasies. Even though retirement savings are higher than they were a few years ago, a huge number of retirees still depend heavily on Social Security, and I mean heavily. According to the Social Security Administration, about 12% of men and 15% of women aged 65 and older rely on Social Security for 90% or more of their income. Read that again, 90% or more. That's not a small supplement. That's the foundation. That's nearly everything. And that dependence doesn't come from laziness. It doesn't come from poor character. It usually comes from a mix of limited savings, rising healthcare costs, and sometimes the need to support adult children or other family members who couldn't launch the way they expected. Originally, Social Security was designed to supplement retirement income, not replace it. But for many retirees today, it's doing most of the heavy lifting. Without it, a lot of people wouldn't just be uncomfortable. They'd be stuck working far longer than their bodies want to, or relying on family just to get by. So before we talk about averages and medians, we need to understand this baseline reality. For millions of Americans, retirement income isn't diversified, it's concentrated. And that concentration creates fragility. One policy change, one cost of living adjustment that doesn't keep up, one inflation spike, and suddenly the math stops working. This is the context most retirement conversations skip. They focus on ideal scenarios and miss the actual landscape. So what does retirement income actually look like? According to recent data, the median monthly income for U.S. adults age 65 and older is about $4,200 per month. That's just over $50,000 per year. Now, here's an important detail. Not everyone over 65 is fully retired. Some are still working part-time or even full-time. Most data sources don't clearly separate retirees from non-retirees, so there's a gray area here. In fact, retirement today is often gradual. A 2024 Fidelity survey found that about two-thirds of Americans plan some form of phased retirement, working less before fully stopping, scaling down instead of switching off. Gallup data shows that between 2016 and 2022, about 70% of people ages 65 to 69 were retired, 83% of those 70 to 74, and 88% of those 75 and older. Very few people retire early. Among those 60 to 64, only about 32% were retired. Between 55 to 59, just 11%, and ages 50 to 54, only 6%, which tells us something important. For most Americans, retirement isn't a sudden event. It's a slow transition, often shaped by necessity, not choice. You don't wake up one day and flip the switch. You ease into it, you test it, you adjust. And for many, that adjustment is driven by financial reality, not by preference. This matters because when people ask, "What's the average retirement income?" they're often imagining a clean break. Work stops, income shifts, life changes. But that's not how it actually unfolds for most people. The average includes people who are semi-retired, people who are consulting, people who took Social Security early but kept working, people who planned to stop at 65 but couldn't afford to. So when you see $50,000 per year, understand that number is blended. It includes people living purely on fixed income and people supplementing with earned income. And that distinction changes everything. Now let's add geography to the picture, because income in retirement varies dramatically depending on where you live. Some states see retirees earning more than twice what retirees earn in other states. That difference comes down to wages during working years, cost of living, tax rules, and whether the state is a magnet for retirees or a place people leave. Pensions are more common in high-wage states. People often save more because they earn more, but they also need more because everything costs more. In lower-cost states, retirees may need less income to get by. A mortgage in Mississippi doesn't look like a mortgage in California. Property taxes in Texas don't look like property taxes in New Jersey. Tax policies matter too. Some states don't tax Social Security benefits, some don't tax retirement account withdrawals, others tax everything. That policy difference can mean thousands of dollars a year in real spending power. All of these factors combine to create a wide spread of retirement incomes across the country, and that spread reveals something crucial. Context matters more than the number itself. A retiree living on $40,000 in rural Tennessee might be comfortable. A retiree living on $60,000 in urban Massachusetts might be struggling. Same country, same benefits, completely different realities. So when you're planning, don't just think about the income number. Think about where that income will be spent, because location is one of the few variables you can still control in retirement. You can't control inflation, you can't control market returns, you can't control healthcare costs, but you can control your zip code. And that choice has leverage, but income is only half the story. To really understand what retirement feels like, we need to look at spending, what retirees are actually living on, and that's where the picture gets even more interesting. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, Americans age 65 and older spend an average of about 50 cents at them $800 in a year. If you're paying attention, that number is higher than the median income we just talked about. How does that work? Part of the answer is simple. Retirees generally spend less than younger households, roughly $20,000 less per year on average. Work-related costs disappear, commutes shrink, cars last longer, and many people enter retirement with their mortgage mostly paid off, or they downsize to something cheaper. Housing costs often fall, transportation costs drop, and retirees are no longer contributing to retirement accounts, which lowers outflows immediately. But here's the uncomfortable truth hiding inside those averages. A lot of retirees are spending more than their income. They're bridging the gap with withdrawals from savings, with Social Security, and sometimes with debt. And yes, debt in retirement is far more common than most people think. Roughly 60% of Americans over age 65 carry some form of debt. That includes credit cards, car loans, mortgages, and home equity borrowing. Not all debt is bad, but when income is fixed, even manageable payments reduce flexibility fast. You can't increase your salary to cover a bad month. You can't work overtime to catch up. The ceiling is set. Now layer in inflation. Prices for groceries, healthcare, housing, and insurance have risen faster than the incomes many retirees rely on. Social Security does adjust for inflation, but often not enough to fully protect purchasing power. So even if the monthly check stays the same, its real value keeps shrinking. That's why many retirees feel squeezed even if the numbers on paper look stable. This is the gap that destroys retirement plans, not catastrophic events. Slow erosion, a little more going out than coming in, year after year, until the cushion is gone. Now let's talk about net worth, because this is where a lot of confusion comes from. The median net worth of households where the head is age 65 to 74 is about $410,000. For those 75 and older, it's around $335,000. At first glance, that sounds not terrible. $400,000. That's real money. That should provide security. But there's a catch. Those figures include the value of the home. And for many retirees, the home is the largest asset by far. Once you subtract home equity, liquid savings and investments often look much thinner. That means the financial cushion available to cover healthcare, emergencies, or rising costs is smaller than it appears. A house can store value, but it doesn't pay monthly bills unless you sell it, borrow against it, or downsize, and each of those options comes with friction. Selling means moving, borrowing means payments, downsizing means transaction costs and emotional disruption. So while net worth sounds reassuring, it doesn't translate directly into spendable income. And in retirement, spendable income is what actually matters. This is why Social Security still plays such a huge role. At the start of 2024, the average monthly Social Security check was about $1,977. That's roughly $23,700 per year. Married couples receive close to double that, around $46,000 per year. Helpful? Absolutely. Sufficient on its own? Usually not. This is why so many retirees rely on a mix of income sources, Social Security, portfolio withdrawals, and sometimes part-time work just to maintain a basic standard of living. And here's the key distinction that ties everything together. There's a difference between being net worth comfortable and being cash flow comfortable. You can't live off furniture. you can't buy groceries with your car, and you can't turn illiquid assets into income without friction. What actually matters in retirement is sustainable, spendable income, money that shows up every month, predictably, reliably, without requiring you to sell something or borrow against something. That's why two people with the same net worth can live completely different retirements. One has flexibility, the other has stress. So, where does that leave us? What can you actually do with this information? First, stop comparing yourself to the average. The average includes people who planned well and people who didn't, people who got lucky and people who didn't, people who retired by choice and people who were forced out. The average is a data point, it's not a destination. Second, understand that retirement income today is almost never one thing. It's a stack. Social Security forms the base. Portfolio withdrawals add a layer. Part-time work or side income might add another. Rental income, dividends, pensions if you're lucky. The more sources you have, the more resilient the system becomes, because if one falters, the others can carry more weight temporarily. Third, recognize that expenses change in retirement, but they don't disappear. Some costs go down, others go up. The goal isn't to eliminate spending, it's to align spending with reliable income. If you know Social Security covers your essentials, everything else becomes optional. Not forever optional, just optional this year, optional this month, and that optionality creates breathing room. Fourth, geography is leverage. If you can live somewhere with lower costs and lower taxes without sacrificing quality of life, you've just increased your effective income by 20% or more, without saving another dollar, without working another year, just by choosing differently. Fifth, build liquid reserves outside your home equity. Net worth is great for balance sheets, but in real life, you need cash you can access without selling your house or taking out a loan. That liquidity is what allows you to adjust when markets dip or when unexpected costs hit. And finally, start earlier than you think you need to, not because you need a massive number, but because time is the variable that changes everything. The good news? If you're watching this before retirement, you're already ahead of the average. You're thinking about it. You're planning. You're not assuming it'll just work out. Starting earlier, saving consistently, building investments that actually generate income. Even reaching half the average goals paired with Social Security and controlled expenses can dramatically change what retirement feels like. The goal isn't luxury, it's security, not worrying about basic needs, not being forced to work when your body says no, not living one medical bill away from panic. So when you hear average retirement income, don't just think about the number. Think about what that income can actually do, because retirement isn't about looking rich on paper. It's about having money that shows up for you every single month, reliably, predictably, without drama, and that's something you can still build. Quietly. Starting today. If this gave you clarity instead of just numbers, subscribe for more financial reality without the fluff. Drop a comment if you're rethinking what enough actually means. Let's talk about it.